This is News Pulse, a beating heart of the news from Ukraine and for the world. My name is Enrique and we are UATV English. What we do is we debunk Russian lies and deliver Ukrainian perspective for all our global sake. Subscribe and let's do it together. Hello. Main topics for today. Ukraine regains territory in Kursk Oblast, no matter what Russia says. Minerals deal finally signed. And hybrid Russian attack on NATO eastern flank. We'll talk about that. Let's go. Despite the loud voice of the Russian Ministry of Defense happily informing Russian Tsar and everyone of the kind that Ukrainian forces have been cleared out of the Kursk region, fighting in the area has not ceased for even a single minute. Recent update by the Institute for the Study of War on the frontline situation as of May 1 confirms exactly that, and geolocated footage published indicates that Ukrainian forces recently advanced southwest of Kucherov, south of Suja. Perhaps the most effective tool, aside from the bravery of Ukrainian soldiers, of course, has been obviously UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles, drones, not just in the Kursk region, but across the entire front line. Night after night, they help repel enemy attacks and strike Russian defense industry targets inside Russian territory. Valery Zelenskyy, a man who knows it all about the matter, of course, the former commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, and currently Ukraine's ambassador to the United Kingdom. He commented on this in a comment to the Athena Lab Research Center.
Precision weapons prove to be extremely expensive, complex to operate, and of limited availability. In contrast, efficient and cheaper alternatives have emerged, such as the massive use of UAV developed by Ukrainians themselves. Examples such as the FPV drones built in Ukraine in facilities as basic as garages or dining rooms change the scenario. Countries like China and Russia have identified this situation and are working to anticipate it. 2024 was a relevant year in the emergence of AI in the use of drones. Ukraine has adapted to it and been a pioneer in innovation for the last 3 years. Valery Zelenskyy, the former commander-in-chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, in a comment to the Athena Lab Research Center.
Among innovations, the Ukrainian armed forces are now using domestically developed titanium charging stations to power drones and other military electronics. The stations are built for fast, safe charging under harsh battlefield conditions.
Titanium portable charging stations are military-grade power banks made for use in rugged environments. Their shock-proof casing and transport case protect the batteries from physical damage during off-road travel, high humidity, and extreme temperature fluctuations. Built-in safety systems prevent overloads, short circuits, fires, explosions, and melting during use. From the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense publication,
according to the Ministry of Defense, said stations can charge batteries for communication devices, and not only for UAVs, reconnaissance systems, vehicles, and other equipment. They use lithium iron phosphate batteries, which allow up to 4,000 charge cycles without capacity loss. There's more to it. A new generation of Ukrainian anti-tank mines, the TM-2025, has appeared on the front lines. These mines feature a novel electromechanical fuse, the MPM-1, with components produced using 3D printing. According to Defense Express, new mines are an upgraded version of the widely used Soviet TM-62, which have been adapted for use as payloads and large multi-rotor drones, improvised explosive devices, engineering demolition charges for destroying bridges, or even as warheads on the ground-based kamikaze drones. Well, I mean, we're living in interesting times, are we not? A word Japanese kamikaze killing a Russian invader in Ukraine using an upgrade of a Soviet mine. Wow, what a sign of times. And Vive la France! Inspired by Ukraine, France has tested a sea-based kamikaze, again drone, similar to the Ukrainian MAGURA V5. As reported by Defense Express, citing sources in the French Defense Ministry, the French Navy conducted an experiment using a remotely operated combat drone scooter to attack decommissioned landing craft under controlled conditions. This test is part of Project Belarus, launched in 2021 to prepare the fleet for high-intensity warfare and to develop new methods of naval combat without actually risking the the crew lives. Well, land life is one lost, really. I'm sure that poor old thing, a decommissioned landing craft, went down on the sea bottom with a sense of accomplishment. Minerals deal, lifeboat or trap? The United States and Ukraine have finally signed an economic partnership agreement granting Washington access to Kyiv's valuable subsoils and rare earth minerals. In return, the US will help establish an investment fund in Ukraine that is governed by Ukraine and is aimed to reconstruct our embattled country. This all is briefly called minerals deal in the international media. The agreement actually marks the culmination of months of intense negotiations between the two countries, beginning shortly after President Donald Trump returned to the White House in January. Tensions throughout the talks occasionally stalled US military aid to Ukraine and threatened broader cooperation in general. Well, what a happy hour for the Kremlin, right? Speaking on Wednesday, President Trump said he personally urged Ukrainian President Zelensky to accept the deal during their recent meeting on the sidelines of Pope Francis' funeral. Trump claimed the US would get more in theory than the $350 billion, referencing the total value of American support for Ukraine, though the actual figure is around $250 billion less, which is $123 billion, and that is counting since the war began in February 2022.
I didn't want to make a complicated deal. I didn't want to make a deal that couldn't be made because Ukraine doesn't have very much money. They're going through a very bad period of time. It's been brutal. But I felt very foolish being a judge. So I said, well, we want something for our efforts beyond what you would think would be acceptable. And we said rare earth. They have very good rare earth. As you know, we're looking for rare earth all the time. Rare earth is called rare for a reason. And they have a lot, and we made a deal where our money is secure, where we can start digging and doing what we have to do. It's also good for them because you'll have an American presence at the site, Chris, and the American presence will, I think, keep a lot of bad actors out of the country, or certainly out of the area where we're doing the digging. So
the US Treasury confirmed the signing on Wednesday. As the president has said, the United States is committed to helping facilitate the end of this cruel and senseless war. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said in a statement. He added that the deal sends a clear message: no person or state that supported Russia's war machine will profit from Ukraine's reconstruction. Music to my ears. Ukraine's Economy Minister Yulia Sviridenko signed the agreement in Washington and emphasized on social media that Ukraine retains full ownership and control over its resources. All natural resources on and in our land and in our waters belong to Ukraine, she writes. Only the Ukrainian state determines what is extracted, where, and by whom.
I am glad to announce the signing of today's historic economic partnership agreement between the United States and Ukraine, establishing the United States-Ukraine Reconstruction Investment Fund. This partnership allows the United States to invest alongside Ukraine to unlock Ukraine's growth assets, mobilize American talent, capital, and governance standards that will improve Ukraine's investment climate and accelerate Ukraine's economic recovery. The Development Finance Corporation will participate and help to establish this fund in collaboration with the government of Ukraine. Today's agreement signals clearly to Russian leadership that the Trump administration is committed to a peace process centered on a free, sovereign, and prosperous Ukraine over the long term.
Well, the agreement nearly fell apart due to a last-minute dispute over the final documents. It had originally been scheduled for signing during Zelensky's visit to Washington in February, but that meeting ended abruptly after the heated Oval Office exchange with Trump. A major sticking point during negotiations was whether the United States would provide Ukraine with security guarantees as part of the deal. Trump initially rejected this idea, insisting that Ukraine must first sign the agreement before any security discussions could begin. At the time, Zelensky publicly criticized the proposed terms, saying he felt like the US was pressuring him to sell the country. Since then, Ukrainian officials have argued that long-term United States investment would inherently increase Washington's commitment to Ukraine's security. In the wake of, let's call a spade, the failed February meeting, Trump briefly suspended military assistance to Ukraine, a move that alarmed European allies and prompted them to commit more support of their own. This has generally reshaped the whole security architecture of Europe. Ukrainian Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal clarified that the deal will not retroactively apply to any previous assistance. On Wednesday, he described the deal as a strategic agreement that forms the basis for a joint investment partnership between the two nations. Under the new arrangement, the United States and Ukraine will contribute equally to the investment fund and, of course, shares the management responsibilities of it. According to Shmyhal, future US military assistance may be counted as part of its contribution, American contribution to the fund and to the deal. Ukraine's mineral wealth has long actually attracted massive international interest. The country holds reserves of 22 of the 50 minerals classified as critical by the United States Geological Survey, including rare earth elements obviously vital to electronics, clean energy production, and advanced weaponry. Currently, China dominates the global supply of these minerals, prompting Western nations to seek alternative sources, with Ukraine emerging as a promising option. A preliminary memorandum under the Biden administration had already laid the groundwork for United States of America investment in Ukrainian mining operations. It included commitments from Ukraine to provide economic incentives and maintain environmental and ethical business standards, which is obviously important. Ukraine signed a similar strategic minerals agreement with the European Union in 2021, so let us not dive into speculations that this deal sells Ukraine to investors, rather a mutually beneficial way to stimulate trade and investments and bring the United States closer to Ukraine, literally. Amen to that. In parallel with the process of signing the agreement, the rhetoric of the US presidential administration towards Russia this time has also changed drastically, if you ask me. Russia is not capable of winning the war against Ukraine, as it has not achieved any significant breakthrough in recent years. The conflict can only be ended at the negotiating table. This was stated by the special representative of the US president, Keith Kellogg, on Fox News. He also emphasized that Moscow claims of alleged victory have no ground
minerals deal is one of them. Also very
Kyiv remained unconquered, the Dnipro an insurmountable barrier, Odessa under Ukrainian control. The losses of the Russian army are measured in hundreds of thousands, and the advance is measured in meters, not miles. Meanwhile, the Ukrainians are fiercely defending their land. Kate Kellogg, United States Special Envoy for Ukraine, in an interview with Fox News.
Now, after reaching an agreement on an economic partnership between Ukraine and the United States, the process of developing a tool of pressure on Russia is accelerating the United States if Moscow continues to sabotage peace initiatives. Thus, 72 senators in the United States support a bill to introduce devastating sanctions against Russia if it refuses peace talks, said one of the authors of the initiative, an associate of US President Lindsey Graham. Bloomberg reports on that. Graham said he also has enough support in the House of Representatives to actually bring the sanctions bill to the floor there as well. The bill includes both primary and secondary sanctions, including a staggering 500% tariff on imports from countries that purchase Russian oil, gas, uranium, or petroleum products. It also proposes a ban on US banks investing in entities affiliated with the Russian government and on US citizens buying Russian government bonds.
I want a negotiated end to the war, honorably and just. I think Trump's the best person to achieve that goal, but these sanctions represent the Senate's view that we see the primary bad guy being Russia. It would be making a huge mistake to try to play Trump. So this bill is a tool in President Trump's toolbox. Lindsey Graham, United States Senator from South Carolina, in an interview with Bloomberg.
Poland's space agency, Polsa, announced on Sunday it had suffered a cyber attack.
In response to the attack, the agency said it disconnected its network from the internet, and as of Monday, its website remained inaccessible. State services responsible for cybersecurity have detected unauthorized access to the telecommunications infrastructure of the Polish Space Agency. Following the incident, the systems affected by the attack have been secured. Intensive operational activities are also being carried out to identify who is behind the cyber attack. Poland's Minister of Digitalization, Krzysztof Gałkowski.
In January, Gałkowski said that Poland's cyberspace is the most frequently targeted in the European Union. He attributed most of the incidents to Russia. Who would ever doubt? Well, Poland has become a prime target for pro-Russian hackers due to its massive military support for Ukraine and its role as a host for Ukrainian refugees. In September, Gałkowski reported that cyber attacks on Poland had doubled since 2023, with over 400,000 incidents recorded in just the first half of last year. Well, if it looks like Russian and sounds like Russian, then maybe. Then let's talk about Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson charged Zelensky for the president being illegitimate, as he's not been re-elected at times of war.
He has no moral claim to run that country at all. So, I'm always a little distressed when he's treated as a legitimate president, which he's not. But, that said, he was in the Oval. Like, that was not, I didn't have any control over any of that. I didn't want him to be in the Oval in the first place. Like, hey, why don't you stand for election? And when you win, then we'll treat you like a head of state.
Well, Tucker Carlson says Zelensky is illegitimate after shaking hands with someone who runs Russia as his private business for last 30 years in a row. 30. Zelensky was 17 when Tucker's interlocutor became a president and then became a Russian dictator, Vladimir Putin. Today, one might ask why Tucker is even saying that crazy things about Zelensky. Well, everybody in the world knows, and it was said a billion times, that according to the Ukrainian constitution, a ballot during times of war is prohibited. Well, let me spell it for all the mother Tuckers of the world. Prohibted, prohibited, not allowed, impossible. I'm not even asking you to imagine a Ukrainian soldier's face while fulfilling his civic duty on the front line with a machine gun in his hands and drones flying over his head. And he's handed a, brochure with a last list of candidates. Well, again, Russian Soviet leftover Tsar Putin sends missiles to kill civilians in Ukraine every day. And he gets indicted by ICC for abducting our children, and he appeals to the law saying Zelensky is not legit. This is what Russians do, They always play one and the same trick because it is working. They appeal to democracy while themselves being a bunch of pseudo-patriotic fascist scum killing children with cluster bombs. And that Zelensky is not legitimate is an ancient narrative of the Kremlin, but it is not the Kremlin Tucker Carlson is looking at over his shoulder.
Ready to give up Crimea, do you think, Mr. President?
Oh, I think so, yeah. Look, Crimea was 12 years ago. That was President Obama. They gave it up without a shot being fired.
And these are not just words. These are the words of the United States President, who in one simple phrase establishes a new global parity, a new mandatory paradigm. If you don't shoot a criminal, then they're no longer a criminal, he is. It's that simple, yes, and the mother Tuckers of the world get the message. Pure force instead of a law. If a thief and a rapist breaks into your house through a window and you didn't kill the bastard, all shame is on you. And a thief and a rapist is not so much a thief and a rapist anymore. He's somewhat even a good guy, a smart guy who used a window of opportunity that just happened to be your bedroom's window. But what did you do about it? Nothing, right? So, then you are nobody. Look at yourself. You cannot even hold elections during a war declared on you by a crazy post-Soviet emperor, when hundreds of thousands of your people are fighting on the front lines for sovereignty and freedom, and Russia is shelling playgrounds in Sumy with cluster bombs. So, what if thousands will gather at the polling stations? So, what if Putin will surely bomb them? The Russians are allowed to do that because they have the cards on their hands. Nuclear weapons, oil, gas, flattering patents of Trump. These cards, and what cards do you have on hand, Zelensky? The law, Budapest Memorandum, United Nations, human values? Don't make Tucker Carlson laugh, Mr. Zelensky. A nuclear bomb is better than the law. Oil is more valuable than blood. Gas is more important than freedom. Do whatever you want if you can. That's the Trump-Carlson law. Have them cards on your hands. The rule of the strong. power instead of the rule of the law. And the power is absolute. The strong cannot be wrong. Well, Ukraine is not asking Tucker Carlson or Donald Trump or anyone else in the world to recognize us as a free nation and our president as legitimate. Ukraine demands it. We have a constitution, and our president acts on its behalf, on our national behalf. We, the people, yes. You want elections in Ukraine? Sure, but first things first, let's hold them in The Hague, right after Putin's trial.
On Wednesday, April 30th, Poland's national registry system came under a large-scale DDoS attack. Local media reported that the attack was successfully repelled, but authorities warn of potential short-term disruptions to tax payments, app functionality, and vehicle registration services. The National Cyber Police and the Internal Security Agency are currently investigating the incident. In Warsaw, officials are considering how to strengthen the country's defenses against cyber attacks targeting critical infrastructure, an issue that gained urgency following a massive blackout in Spain and Portugal.
I have decided to convene the National Security Council in the near future because I want to discuss the security of Poland's energy system. We asked the Spanish government representative, the minister, if he could provide more details on the cause of this very serious outage. What exactly triggered it? He said that the matter is still under investigation and that it likely resulted from a combination of several factors. Andrzej Duda, President of Poland, in a comment to Polsat News,
the Ministry of Digital Affairs has reported a rise in disinformation, particularly around the upcoming presidential election. One example was a so-called disinformation operation, believed to have been carried out by Russian actors within the English language information space. The ministry notes that the aggressor state is increasingly using X social network to spread fake content. Between March 4th and April 4th, 2025, nearly 300 such posts about Poland's elections appeared on the platform.
Disinformation authors assume that users will not click on links or read full texts. This is a method that has been used in disinformation for a long time. Old articles or screenshots of headlines are also often used, lacking full context, to support the false claim contained in the post. Because Russia pursues its goals by exploiting public debate and natural axes of dispute, it can be difficult for a normal social media user to distinguish whether they are reading a genuine comment from a user with specific views or a coordinated action inspired by the Kremlin. From the Polish press agency publication.
Last week, the Netherlands uncovered a Russian hacker attack on the infrastructure of a government agency. A separate attack targeted critical infrastructure, which The Hague believes may be part of a sabotage preparation effort. According to the Dutch Ministry of the Interior, Russian cyber aggression is aimed at destabilizing societies.
The fact that they are willing to sabotage a public service in the Netherlands is, by itself, is sort of example that they are increasing their risks. If you look at the speed of which Russia is increasing its military complex, its equipment, its artillery, it's by far much faster than we do in Europe, even in the US. That creates what I would mention as a sort of window of vulnerability for us.
For the first time, France has officially accused Russian intelligence of launching cyber attacks against the country. Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot made the statement during a UN Security Council meeting and repeated it on X social network. According to Barrot, Russia's main intelligence directorate has conducted multiple cyber attacks over the past decade, targeting France's defense, finance, and economic sectors.
Since the beginning of the war, our country, standing in support of Ukraine, has been the target of Russian cyber attacks carried out by the main intelligence directorate, Russia's military intelligence. They attacked dozens of French entities, including government bodies, companies, and organizations linked to the 2024 Olympic and Paralympic Games in Paris. We strongly condemn these attacks.
In the second half of 2024, Russian cyber attacks on Ukraine increased by 48% compared to the first half of the year. That's according to a report from Ukraine's State Center for Cyber Defense under the Special Communications and Information Protection Service. Ukrainian experts say Russian hackers have increasingly automated their operations, combining espionage with sabotage. Their primary objective, intelligence gathering and data theft from defense-related enterprises. Reported by Larissa Petruk, UATV News.
Well, that seems to be it for tonight. My name is Henry Keane and we are News Pulse by UATV English, beating heart of the news from Ukraine directly and for the rest of the free world, doing our best to debunk Russian lies and deliver Ukrainian truth for all of our global sake. Stay safe and tune for more already tomorrow. Goodbye.